Okay, so in our last video, what we got set up is we just set up the main class, and we pretty much left it at that. In this video, what I'd like to cover is creating a variable and changing it around in the update method, drawing a string to the screen, drawing a rectangle to the screen, and also getting some input from the user. So let's go over here and open up our buttercup.java class. And the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create a new global variable. So we're going to call public static int, and we'll just call it hello. We'll say it equals 0. Now, since you're all probably familiar with Java, you obviously know what that does, but what we're going to do with this is we're going to go to the update method, and the update method gets called automatically by Slick2D. That will handle it for us. So what we just need to do is we just need to say hello++, and that way every time it runs through the game logic it will automatically increment the variable hello. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go to our render, because now we need to draw that to the screen. So I think that's all fairly easy right there. We didn't do anything too complex. What we're going to do now is something that actually is more specific to Slick2D. On Slick2D there is a graphics object which the render method takes in as an argument, and the graphics has all of our methods for drawing output to the screen, drawing on the window. Now we're going to do g.drawString, which, as you can imagine, just draws a string to the screen. And we're going to say hello plus our variable hello world. And then the next parameter it's going to take in is the x-coordinate at which we should draw this. And then the third is the y-coordinate where we should draw it. So we're just going to say 1, 1. And I'll get into some more detail on that in a second. So now, if we go and compile this, what we have to do when we compile it, I should mention that, is if you're compiling via command line using the Java C compiler, is you're going to want to add the -cp option. And what you pass to that is dot, colon, or if you're on Windows, use a semicolon, lib/*, and then a space. That is your class path, so it tells it first check the current directory, and if it can't find a class in the current directory, it's going to check the jar files that it finds in the lib folder, which is where we put all of our game libraries. So now we're just going to want to do buttercup.java, so we compile that, and it's compiled. Okay, so now we could do Java, and we also have to do -cp, same option there, and just buttercup. We don't want the .java or .class or anything like that. When we run this, and see, now we have this outputting here, and it's just incrementing that up. One problem though is, how do we exit this program? There's no real easy way. I have a shortcut set up so I can do that, but there's no real easy way to do that. So the next thing we need to do is we need to get some input from the user. Now, there are two different ways to get input from the user. The first one that I'm going to show you is just a key listener, which is probably similar to what you've used before with Java if you've worked with GUIs or anything like that, just event-based key listening. Conveniently, the basic game that we have already extended with this class already implements an input listener. So all we have to do is do an override method. And we'll just say public void key pressed, and it'll be an int key, which is the key code, and char c. The key code we're going to compare with several predefined constants that the input class has. So we'll say if key equals input with a capital I, all uppercase key underscore escape. Then what we want to do is call app.exit, which is basically the same as system.exit, but it's specific to Slick2D to make sure that the actual and all of the game libraries get shut down properly. So we'll use that. And so now what we'll find is if we go and compile this now and then run it, we can just hit the escape key and it closes. You probably didn't see a difference from what I did before, but just hitting the escape key now will close it. And you can verify that for yourself. The other input method that we have now is a more convenient for certain things, such as checking if a key is being held down or getting the mouse coordinates at any time at all, whether the mouse has been moved or not. So what we can do for this is public static input, the same input as what we had down in key pressed, and we'll just call input with a lowercase I. And then in our init method, what we need to do is do input equals gc dot, which is our game container, dot get input. And that returns an input object that is specific to our current game. And now we have a bunch of methods for getting input from the user inside of our input object here. So now what we can do is we can do any method such as input dot get mouse x or input dot get mouse y, input dot is key pressed key in, which returns if you hit the in key. What we're going to use this for is to get our mouse coordinates. So we're going to do a g.drawString, and we're going to want the mouse x, and we're going to want to concatenate that to input.getMouseX. And so obviously this is just going to draw a string to the screen that will show what our x coordinate of the mouse is. And then we're going to do the same thing for our y coordinate. Now once we have this, then we can really see how Slick2D handles our coordinate system. Now if you've done much with math before in the past, calculus or anything like that, graphs and stuff, then you're probably familiar with the idea that your origin, your 0, 0 point, is way down here in the center. And if you want to draw up in this top left corner, you have to do negative positions. And this is going to be, or negative x position and positive y. And this is negative for all of them, and this is positive for x, negative for y, and so on. Well, in Slick, we consider the top left 0 for both. And then as we go to the right, our mouse x gets bigger. And as we go down, our mouse y gets bigger. So if we want to draw something to the center of the screen, we actually have to draw it at 400, 300, not at 0, 0. Now the other thing about Slick2D is that when we draw, we only ever draw to the top left corner of the object. And so you can run into problems if you're trying to draw something centered on a position, that you have to subtract half of its width and half of its height from where you draw it. Otherwise, you'll end up drawing it off-center. So that's something that we'll have to keep in mind when we start drawing our character. To illustrate this, let's try drawing a rectangle that we want at... Let's try drawing two rectangles. One we're going to put at the center, without taking into account the idea that it automatically centers for you. And the other one we will take that into account. I can't actually remember if it's shortened to rect or if it's a rectangle, so If I'm wrong, I think it's this, but if it's wrong, we will find that out shortly. So first we're going to say the first coordinate is its x position that we're drawing it at, the top left corner that we're going to draw it at, and the second is its y coordinate. So this is going to draw its top left corner at the center of the screen. But then we're going to make it 25 pixels wide and 25 pixels tall. Of course, width comes before height in this, the same as with x coming before y on the position. So what we're going to do there is we're going to do that, and then we're going to run it. And we see that it's there. But if you notice, if you look very closely, it's not actually centered on the screen. It's actually a little bit to the bottom right of the center, because its top left corner is at the center of the screen, not its center. Now, also you notice that it was hollow. That's because drawRect automatically just draws the outline of the rectangle. Now what we're going to do is do a fillRect. And we're going to try to draw this at the very bottom right of the screen. But remember, if we draw it right here, what's going to happen is we're not going to see it at all, because that's just going to draw it at the very, very bottom, its top left corner at the bottom right. So it's going to go completely off the screen. So what we're going to have to do, if we want it at the bottom right, is subtract its width and height from our actual coordinates. So here, 600 minus 25 is 575, and 800 minus 25 is 775. And so now what we're going to see is that we now have it drawn at the very bottom right of the screen. So now you see that there are several different methods for getting input. There are multiple methods for getting input from the user. There are various ways of drawing things to the screen, and you see how the coordinate system of Slick2D works. On this event listener, there are also things such as a mouse moved parameter method, which gives in you your old x, your old y, your new x, and your new y. And you could do the same thing of what we did above using only this event listener of the mouse moved, and it would work just fine. But we would have to do more things, such as storing the new x and new y coordinates between mouse movements so that we can recall them whenever we want. This will have certain times in which we will prefer to use the event-based, and certain times we're going to want to prefer to use the non-event-based, the polling system, depending on what we're trying to accomplish. A menu, for example, we're probably going to want event-based. But if we want to get whether the player is holding down the movement key to move forward, then we might want to do polling based. In the next video, what I'd like to cover is actually drawing an animation to the screen and being able to see something animate for you, because Slick2D's animation system is extremely impressive and very easy to work with. So that's what I'd like to cover in the next video. Until then, keep messing around, and I'll see you next time.